everybody, and welcome to our third episode of the Business of Music Radio, our Business of Music podcast here. I am Michael Holdt, and my partner in crime is
Michael Wyatt.
and in our previous episodes, we've been talking about things like what you should do in a band, like the copyrights, or eventually we're going to talk about writing a song. But I realized that maybe I should give a little bit of insight as to what bands, what individual musicians do or don't do right and wrong as they're in a band, and what it was very disturbing to me to hear some players say to me, wow, I'm in this band, but if we ever got into a fight and broke up, there'd be nothing to show for it. And I'm thinking, that's because you did something wrong if there's nothing to show for it. Because don't you have music on the air? Don't you have music online? What? So I'm taking this time to explore with the audience what bands have to do and what band members need to do. It's not to protect themselves in a way, but it's to make something of what you got. In other words, if you're in a band and you've actually got the chemistry and the luck and everything has come together, that you have a 3, 4, or 5 person band together, that in itself is really cool. And you have to try to see what you can make of it. Now, you have different personalities in a band, and I've heard so often people say, well, that's why the band broke up, because there's different personalities in the band. Wait a minute. That's the case anywhere, but in a band, you may have a leader, you may have a follower. In other words, you may have someone who just wants to play. You ever heard that? The musician says, I just want to play music. Well, sure, but that's what everybody wants to do. Me too. This is what Michael wants to do, but there's more to it than that, so that you have things going on when you're not necessarily even performing. Like I have the music online on Spotify, on the radio sometimes, where things are happening, but that doesn't happen on its own. You have to have a band that is cohesive together. And okay, so I'm a leader type, but I also can be in a band. I'm hired to fix tracks on someone's mix. I'm hired to be the drummer in someone's band and be the backup. Well, that's not a leader, so I'm a follower there, and that's cool. If they hire me to do that and that's what we agree, then I'm not leading the band. I'm following in the band. You have to know that. Meaning if they ask me to do something, I'm going to do that. Now, if I think that there's a better way, they're hiring me because they trust my judgment. So if I think there's a better way, I may say I have a better way, I think possibly, of doing this, but if you don't like it, I don't want to take over. So let me try this.
I think with bands, just like any organization, and people don't really look as a lot of guys just get together with a band and they're just making music. They don't look at it as a business. In every business, you have a structure, a hierarchy, as a nice way to put it, of, okay, in other words, if nobody is in charge of the situation, it's like nobody's driving the car, nobody's driving. Somebody has to be driving, and there has to be somebody in charge, because otherwise you're just running around aimlessly and there's no direction. Because if you don't have somebody in charge, then there's no objective, and basically nothing gets accomplished. So it has to be established ahead of time who is in charge and everybody's roles as far as their input and their level of input. In other words, if a person is just a hired hand, he's just there to play music, he has to be able to take direction from whoever is the lead singer or the band manager. But that needs to be established ahead of time.
So in episode 1, I mentioned a phrase that I coined about 10 years ago that was called the bandocracy. And what I meant by that was you have a band that is a democracy.
Precisely.
But you have a bandocracy, meaning I, or the person who is leading, A democracy does not mean you have a board of directors and that everybody necessarily always votes, and it doesn't work like this. Everyone gets their opinion, but the band leader is making the decisions. Dave Matthews Band is the most clear example that I can think of ever. Great players, all of them. Dave Matthews knows he can't make decisions without talking with the band. I've seen him do it, okay? They're making decisions, they're figuring out what to do, but he makes the decision. He goes ahead and makes the deal, and they're relying upon him to make the deal after he has kind of consulted with everybody, and he takes everyone's opinion seriously. They're not just there. But he is a leader. Now, if you don't have a leader of a band, I actually think the band's going to crash.
Absolutely.
Because you can't have just 5 players and continuity. You can't do it. But you also may have 2 or 3 players who are strong-willed and opinionated, and 2 players who just want to play.
Well, everyone has a voice, and opinions are welcome, and that's the bands that I've been in. I've actually said that. Yeah. I want to have your input. I want your opinion. Yeah. Because everyone does have a voice, yeah. And everybody, and there's no such thing as a bad idea. Mm-hmm. Everybody has their input, but all band members, are able to bring a song to the table. Okay, music.
Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, which is a little bit more complicated than that. Let's say you have a band and you're writing a song, right?
Okay.
Whose song is it?
The song is. It depends if everybody in the band writes it together.
Okay. What happens if one person came up with the concept and everyone else helped write it?
Well, then all the players wrote that song, because if you wrote the song as far as the lyrics, mm-hmm. and they were in the composition portion of it where they helped compose it, then they are co-creators. So you all created together.
That's interesting. Taylor Swift writes a song. She has a studio band.
Okay.
The band is putting together this song with her. She's not sharing the rights.
That's not right.
You have the Beatles. Paul McCartney wrote a song. He wrote the song. They're getting together, and everyone else in the band is contributing, including Ringo Starr. Everyone else in the band is putting something together, and John Lennon. Everyone is saying, "Can I do this? Can I do this?" And that's how they wrote the song. But the song is copyrighted in Paul McCartney.
Interesting.
So the way the law works is the person who wrote the song is the person who gets that. The creation of the audio of the song is another copyright which the band gets. Now, that almost encourages people to write the music, to write the original concept, because they supposedly get more out of it because they've got the copyright.
Absolutely.
Now, if the band decides, like Sublime, if the band decides that they are going to share that, they have to know this in advance and make that understanding in advance.
Yes.
So this is what I mean by doing things that a lot of bands don't want to do. I've seen bands come to me and say, "I'd like you to play for me, but you're going to be on the copyright." When I saw the song being formed, I realized that they weren't putting me on the copyright. I left.
Absolutely, because if you're not getting credit for it, it's almost a waste of your energy and time.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. If you're in a band and you're thinking, if I leave the band, there's nothing to show for it. You have to make it where there's something to show for it.
Absolutely.
If you want that to be there, because you're creating something that, in my opinion, you should own part of.
Of course, because the thing is, if you put your energy into something, then it's like people who have a regular job.
Yes.
If you go to work, are you getting paid for that? Nobody wants to work for free. And yes, creating music is, our passion and what we love to do, but it's also a business, and you also have to think of it in a way that if I'm going to put the energy into this, I should get credit and get something out of it.
These musicians are thinking that they're going to go ahead and they're gun ho because they want to be performing and they want to perform the song.
Yes.
But they do have to make it. They do have to take the time to establish what the rules are.
Absolutely. And you've got to move beyond, like what I've always, I used to tell my students was, it's great that you love to sing and perform, but you've got to go beyond a musician or a singer and look at this as a business person's point of view, because if you don't, you're almost wasting your time. You have to put on that hat of not only a musician, but also the hat of a business person.
Right. Now, often in a band, if you have a couple of players who are followers and not leaders, you're going to have a situation where everyone is expecting them to be following and not really leading. And then you have the situation where all of a sudden they want to contribute. The band has to be flexible to allow them to contribute. Otherwise, you get a fight.
Absolutely, and that's why a lot of bands do break up.
Yes.
Because this person has a song idea, this one has a song idea, and then and there's a power struggle. So what has to happen is from day one, when that group is put together, that relationship and the rules have to be laid out initially, because that way then there's no gray area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So I am, again, referring back to these people that have said, oh, there's nothing to show for it. I think that they didn't know what they had to do.
Exactly. It wasn't laid out initially. So if you don't give somebody clear direction.
They did not know what to do.
Yeah.
As the band was realizing it was a band.
There wasn't clear direction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's essential just in anything with business, and like I said, that's why we are known as the business of music.
Uh-huh.
Because a lot of people, I love to play music, I love to sing, all that, but you've got to look at it as a business.
Then you have the other one, which is, okay, what is your goal? Is your goal to play clubs? Is it your goal to play larger venues? Is your goal to get signed? I've seen some bands say, I'm putting my stuff together because my goal is to be signed. Well, signing the band, are you going to allow some company to tell you now what you have to write and what you have to play? Because if you're signed to a company,
mm-hmm.
they're going to start telling you what to do.
Absolutely.
You almost have to, in advance, know that if a scout is looking at your band, that you have parameters.
Absolutely. That has to be established from day one, because when you sign a record deal, mm-hmm. that record company, that band manager, whoever your A&R manager who's assigned to you by that record label, mm-hmm. they have a very specific initiative. They want this done, and this done, because they're in business to make money.
Right.
And that's something a lot of artists understand, is when you sign with a label, basically they're in charge. You've just taken on a boss.
Unless you are like Dave Matthews, where he had 10 or 12 labels approach him over several years, and only finally, when it was negotiated that he would do the music he wants to do, mm-hmm. to be signed, did it work. Then it worked, but otherwise it didn't work.
Well, that's why a lot of artists initially will go indie. And you can establish your own indie label. I've actually done it when I had a production company. We had our own publishing company and our own indie label, because we did not want to give away our money, our rights.
Okay. Yes.
And like I said, there's advantages to being indie, and there's also advantages to being with a record label, but initially, when you sit down with that record label, you need to have an entertainment attorney present, because all of that needs to be laid out, completely laid out. Right. And if it's not laid out in front, just like there's a lot of bands I've had, when I worked with the radio stations and I interview it, where these, I won't name names, but one of the ladies was telling me while we were on the road, we were actually having to call our families to have money for food. And when we got off the tour, suddenly we got a bill from the record label for the limos and the airfare.
Right.
Because it was not laid out, and they did not have an attorney present. Because a lot of artists, they figure, they dangle this in front of them. Oh, here's a record deal that gets signed, but they don't really think it through, and they're just so glad to be offered a deal that they get screwed. And the thing is, you've got to come into it with a clear head, because these are business people, and they can smell desperation.
Yes. And we are out of time in this segment. We will be right back right after, on the other side. And we are back. And before we continue on, and I have topics to talk about that relate to what Michael was just discussing when it comes to labels and creating music. We'll get that in a second, but I wanted to make sure people know that I love Texas Cymbals. I mentioned earlier on that they have actually endorsed me. And so I'm endorsing. I want to let everybody know that that if you use Zildjian cymbals like I used to, I love how they play. But then Trexist is a better cymbal. They're more communicative. They're more responsive. They're more vibrant, and I encourage you to try them because they are awesome. And I use them with everything I do now, even in the studio, because as much as the Zildjian is a sound that blends in, the Trexist does that, but the dynamics are greater. And when you really want them to play out and have more volume and standout ability, they do that without being brandish in your ear. So, and Mike, you want to say something?
And I would like to thank Neumann Microphones for all of their amazing equipment. Whether you go with a full dynamic mic, you go with a condenser, or a full condenser, and they also make ribbon microphones. They make a whole line of microphones from handheld to studio quality where you're in a sound booth. And I think Neumann Microphones, the sound is truly amazing. I'm actually talking to you right now on a Neumann microphone. And the difference I've noticed between a lot of other manufacturers of the microphones is your pitches on your highs are correct. Your lows are correct. And a lot of microphones, they cut off your highs and your lows and you sound flat. It's your mids that basically all they're hearing. With a Neumann microphone, you're hearing what your human ear can actually interpret. So it's like somebody standing next to you talking into your ear. The sound quality is duplicated exactly like your ear would hear it if you were hearing somebody speak. So if you want the best, go with a Neumann microphone because your sound level will be unparalleled.
Are they available like anywhere?
You can get them pretty much anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I actually I purchased them through an online company called Sweetwater,
Okay.
and they seem to have everything, and they have a whole page of just the Neumann stuff, and they're an authorized Neumann dealer.
Got it. So now I want to continue on with where we left off before the break, which I thought, let me give some examples that everyone can relate to, and when it comes to the record labels, and when it comes to the bands, and when you think everything is hunky dory and fine, and it isn't. Okay. We have recently on the news the story of the Taylor Swift, where she was discovered and signed as a kid to I'm not going to mention names, we don't need to a country label. Let's just say a country label, because they thought that she would do great doing country albums, and she signed a deal where she'd make a certain number of albums, and then they would renegotiate the terms. I personally think, as a country artist, she's phenomenal. Okay, she was up there with LeAnn Rimes to me. It was like I liked everything she was doing. She grew up, got those country albums done, and then wanted to do rock and roll.
Yep.
And she was actually complaining that the label wouldn't let her do rock and roll because she signed with one genre and you don't switch genres. Now, there is opinions on that, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is, her following, her groupies, followed her from what she did up to that point. And you should thank the label for making her what she was at
Absolutely.
that time. She didn't seem to, though. She seemed to be all angry that she wasn't doing rock and roll.
Well, she wanted it her way, and a lot of artists don't understand that she agreed to do country.
Okay, so then she goes into the rock and roll, and she's having success with that, using the same people who are following her to do the rock. Nothing wrong with that, right? Okay, so you change your genre, you change your sound, and now you're doing rock and roll, and that's all good. Okay, so you're doing this, and all the success to her, terrific. So then she goes ahead and gets several albums of that done, and then she's complaining that she that the ownership of her music is not hers.
Okay.
Now, I can understand that
Of course.
because what they did was kind of warped. What they did was kind of warped in that, okay? But here's where it gets a little interesting because she is claiming that she is remaking all the music and saying this is the real Taylor Swift. And the fact is that she's suggesting that everyone should buy the new, and there's nothing wrong with that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But for the sake of the show and understanding copyrights, anyone who's buying the old albums, anyone who's buying the old music, there is still money being made there, and that money is actually going to the old agent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So that's the part that I wanted to make clear, that if you buy her new material,
Okay.
the money from that is going to her system, her world, her network, her agency.
Okay.
But the old money is going to the old agent.
Yes.
Okay, and so it isn't the perfect world for that at all. But she did remake her stuff, saying "F you" to the old people.
Mm-hmm.
But business wise, the old agent still has her catalog.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because those were all remakes of her original songs,
Yes.
and whoever owns the catalog
Mm-hmm.
owns the rights to the music.
Yes, that's right. So I brought this up because I like Taylor Swift music. I like Taylor Swift, have nothing against artists, and don't ever want to bash an artist on the air. But I wanted people to know a perspective from the business of music side of exactly what is going on. It's kind of like, as I've said again in episode 1, I believe it was, that the music type of copyright is the only type of copyright where someone can go ahead and copy your music without your permission. The difference is, if you play this publicly, you will have to pay the original writer of the music, but you do not have to get their permission to use it. You just have to pay them for the copyright rights to use it. And a lot of artists will actually wait for the BMI or ASCAP or someone to come after them and say, "Hey, man, you played their song. You played my artist's song," and then you have to fess up to it and settle. And pay them
It's
something.
kind of the wrong way to do it. It's like going in through the back door instead of the front door.
Look at DJs. DJs are doing this all the time. They're playing
Yeah.
someone else's music, and then they have to get, and they're not allowed to do that really when they're doing anything corporate or when they're doing anything that's not private.
Guilty right here.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you were gonna say you sounded like you had some similar
Well, I had some.
history.
Well, I won't mention the name of the club or the radio station, but I had an A&R manager from a very popular radio station, and they owned a club. And what they were doing was a lot of the up and coming artists who were signed to that radio station's label, they would be showcased and debuted. So I was actually DJing at that club and
So I
working
need
with
to
that
interrupt you
station.
for a second. When you say the radio station's label, are you saying the label had a radio station? Because usually radio stations don't have labels, but in this case, the label had a radio station.
The label had a radio station and a club. They owned all entities, and what the purpose of the club was not only to make money of a club, but it was to showcase the people on the label, so that when they played their music on the radio station, there was a following already and people who knew who they were. So you had a lot of these. You had an A&R manager who would come to the club, and I worked at the club. I was actually the DJ and ran the club, and that club held over 3,000 people, a huge club. And a lot of these artists, we'd be back in the green room, everybody eating, and I'd have conversations.
3,000 people was more like a concert hall.
It's that big.
Okay.
Yeah. And they would come and a lot of these young up and coming artists, and I would, afterwards the performances, sometimes before, in the green room, we would talk about, how they liked it with the station and how they got discovered. I was curious about them. I'd get into conversations. And a lot of these record deals that they signed, they didn't go into the deal with their eyes open. It was more of their eyes were closed because they didn't know what they were getting into, and they were very naive as far as what they were signing. And in other words, the record label / radio station saw their desperation and said, these guys will sign anything because they're so desperate to get discovered. And you don't ever want to go into a situation of desperation. You want to go in there with confidence, because that way you have some leverage versus going in there desperate. Because once they see you're desperate, then they are in control of the situation. You've given up your power.
Desperation usually means a lack of preparation.
Absolutely.
In other words, why do you want to be signed? A lot of artists want to be signed because they don't want to do the work of finding the shows, and so they're expecting, and they want someone else to pay for their music to be created or something like. These are what I've heard.
It's the dream of, like, they want to be like their idols, their Michael Jacksons, and they think, I'm going to be a big star someday, and the industry has put this in their heads of basically.
Before the internet, you couldn't do it without it, but but the desperation would have been because you want to be a band and perform out, and that's the only way to do it. Now, very important, that's not the only way to do it now.
No, because we're talking back in the 80s and late 90s of how this was actually done.
Right.
And these a lot of these people, these talent scouts from the label, were sent to literally one guy I talked to, he was discovered at a high school talent show. Yeah. And they pulled him into the room, and the guy put a contract in front of this kid, and he signed it. Oh wow, I get discovered, and we're going to get you in studio, and the guy got him all hyped up, and we're going to get you on tour, and everybody's going to know who you are. He signed it without even reading it. He admitted that to me.
Okay, so now we want to talk about what an agent actually does for a band or doesn't do for a band. Because in our world of the internet, in our world of YouTube, you don't need a label.
Absolutely.
and it can help after you're bigger, but it also can hurt after you are bigger, because you lose control with a label no matter what you do. You don't lose control as an indie performer with your own world, with your own band out there performing. So this is important, because if you are a band, you have to be thinking, what is your direction? What is your goal? What are you trying to do? Yep. Now, I say from my experiences that you want to get into the local venues and then get into the bigger venues, meaning 250 to 400 people minimum, for a while, so that people know that you draw a crowd. And then at that point, you have your resume already done, where you know what type of music you're really doing. The fans know what to expect from you.
Yep. And
it's easy to find the festivals that cater to that, and they all thrive on independent artists. They don't need the label. The label is okay, but the independent artist is also booked.
True.
So you don't need that. And so if you do the homework, again, this goes back to the fact that the band has to do the homework, because if you don't have an agent, you have to do it yourself.
Yes, and a lot of these kids that were signing with the label, there was no agent, and they knew that. I'm going to send out talent scouts, and they were going out to like open mic nights, anywhere they thought they could get somebody, because they knew these guys didn't have an agent. And the whole job, and I'll say the guy's name, his name was Ricky. He was the A&R manager. And Ricky kind of laughed at me, and he goes, "Oh, they don't even know what they're getting into." His whole job was go out, recruit, find talent, and then the label would package these guys and sell them.
Yes.
And the label really didn't care about those artists. Mm-hmm. It was, let's find people, let's get a product, and let's package this up and sell and make money.
And they actually don't care if the band dies and burns.
No, and a lot of these people in these bands, this one girl group that I was working with for a while, they auditioned in Miami. Mm-hmm. There was an open call for a girl band of three singers. Mm-hmm. Okay, there were 2,000 people who auditioned. None of these girls knew each other before this audition. Mm-hmm. And suddenly she went from, one girl I was friends with, she went from being a waitress to suddenly we're on a world tour, and they were so glad to be signed that they basically at the audition, "Oh, we like you. We've made our decision. Here's the contract. Sign this." Mm-hmm. And they don't even give you time to read through it. She says, "Oh, we just signed it," and suddenly we're on a plane. That's just the wrong way to do it. It's almost, they trap these young artists who are with their, because they know they're naive and desperate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, you have to go into the discussion about this with your whole band, and you have to decide what you want to do in the venue. I personally believe that you should go into the local clubs, get enough of a following, a buzz, then go to local festivals, perform in the local festivals, work up a following, and you would be able to put out an EP.
Yep.
Which we've discussed in previous episodes, within, say, 6 months of that time, and be able to be performing independently by booking festivals. That's where you go, and have your music copywritten. So this does take 6 months to a year to get going, but once you are going and you're good and consistent, the work is there.
Yes, absolutely. And my advice to people who are starting out at this: have your objective and know with that band exactly what you want. When you go play at these festivals, you play at these shows, don't go into any situation blind with wow, hey, I'm just trying to get discovered. That's the wrong mentality to think. Realize that, and this is the key, that you have a talent. You have something that's worthwhile that they want, and they're not doing you a favor.
Remember, you have to be remembered to be discovered.
Yes.
If you're not memorable,
what makes you different?
Then you're not going to be noticed over a long enough term to be discovered, meaning picked up, signed.
Yeah, what makes your band different than every other band out there who's singing? And I'll tell you, it's not only what makes you different, it's your style can make you different. It's the type of music and original songs. What have you written that, as far as your lyrics, what makes you stand out?
What genre, how do you want to be classified? How does your band want to be classified as far as the sound you're making? Do you want to be alternative rock? Do you want to be smooth jazz? Do you want to be rock and roll? Do you want to be... You have to figure this out, because there are festivals and venues for all of that.
Absolutely.
And we are out of time in this segment. We will continue. I have some thoughts I want to bring up. We will be right back on the other side after this break. And we are back. Thank you all for listening. My name is Michael Holdt.
And my name is Michael Wyatt.
And before we finish up the show, I again wanted to remind everyone to go to their store or go to the website and listen to the sounds of the Trexist cymbals. I shamelessly promote them because I love them and I love the way they sound. I love the way they resonate. They make any performance better, and they make my performance better. And I do like Zildjian, but I like Trexas better because I do believe that they just talk more. They communicate more in the music. I can tap it with a piano, and they respond just like they should. And then if I crash them, they resonate and they pierce through. Whereas the Zildjians often blend in a little bit. These, if you do it right, can sound out beyond the blend and allow you to communicate the sound that you want to do, or the moment that you want to do, communicate a little bit better. So, and of course, we are speaking on.
Neumann microphones,
That's right.
a cut above the rest. Their quality, the sound quality, your resonance. If I'm singing, especially with my range, I want something that's going to do my voice justice. It's going to capture all of my range. I don't want something that's not going to record everything that I'm capable of singing. And the Neumann microphones can do that for you. So whether you're a baritone, a tenor, or a soprano, whatever your vocal range is, whatever type of music you're singing, from rock to opera to R&B, the Neumann microphone, in my opinion, is the clear choice because your sound quality is true. And what you want as an artist is you want the truest sound quality you can get, because a lot of microphones I've tried in the past, they distort the voice because the diaphragms in the microphones are not capable of producing the sound because of the sound quality.
So when you're saying they're distorting the voice, are they clipping? Or are they just not giving you all the frequencies?
They're not capable as far as you have what's called a dynamic microphone.
Okay.
The Neumann microphones has what's called a dual filter double diaphragm. So which means like the mic I'm talking on right now, when I speak into the first diaphragm of the microphone, the vibration, if it's whatever is not caught on the first diaphragm, is filtered into the second cone diaphragm. And that's your standard diaphragm microphone versus a condenser microphone. And you have, Neumann makes omnidirectional and a bidirectional. And that also it has a lot to do with the sound pattern and of how it records sound. Like as far as if you're singing into the microphone and you're in a loud environment where there's a band and you don't have the advantage of a sound room, the Neumann microphone, you want a bidirectional, which means that it catches the sound in front that you're singing versus recording what's in the rear, almost like a cone shape. And that is one type of condenser microphone. Or if you go full condenser, that's for a sound booth itself. All three of your options made by Neumann are amazing.
So as we're back here, I wanted to comment on what was going on in the last segment that we spoke about, where I was saying you have a band, you need to get into the local club, and then from that point forward, you need to go into a concert venue where you have maybe 200 or 250 people in attendance. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't want to sound conceited about this. So we need to back up and explain that you do need all the while as a band to be promoting your band. You need to get these people to the venue. The way to do it is to have sound clips online. The way to do it is to make sure people know wherever you're playing in advance. The way to do it is to have swag and to be giving swag away. The way to do it is to have contests and to say the 20th person to buy a ticket at the door gets this prize. You have to have things where you're spending a little bit in order to get the people there, but you're spending it on marketing. So you need to do this. I guarantee you, if your band is good and you do the marketing and you put this effort into it, you will have 100 people first to start, maybe 50, 100 people, and then from that point it grows exponentially. You have 150 people, 200 people, 250 people. It isn't that hard to do if you do that work to put it out. There are many, many steps to that. I'm sure you have some things you want to.
You could have the greatest band in the world, just like having the greatest website in the world. But if nobody knows you exist and who you are, then you've wasted your energy. So the marketing is huge because you've got, especially with the advent of social media these days, you have so many vehicles to get yourself out there to become known. Because, for instance, Facebook is huge. A lot of artists have a Facebook page, okay? And, YouTube is also huge. You want to make yourself known. You want to, before you even perform at that club, you want to establish a following. And establishing a following, you can do that through social media by posting what's known as snippets of your stuff. You can have links from your Facebook page to your YouTube channel, which is, by the way, free to establish. And that gives them snippets and samples. So they're teasers, kind of like a film would have. And if the people like what your snippets, they're more inclined to pay to come see you.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to say. There are several pieces of homework, several steps that you need to have under control in order to be able to promote your band. Yes, you need a Facebook page, but you also need a website. Now, there's a lot of argument I know out there about saying that bands just need a Facebook page, they don't need a website. I think you need a website too.
Absolutely.
Because the website clarifies what you are, it adds strength to your existence and to your organizational abilities of the band. So you have a website, you have a Facebook page, you have to get the t-shirts and the swag and the stuff to give away and to sell to people.
Yep.
Why is swag important at a show? Someone comes to your show and they really like your show. They want to take something home to remember it by.
Yes.
It's a piece of the night. It's a piece of a good memory that they're bringing home with them.
Yes,
that's
and
what it is.
A lot of bands did, and what I did with bands to get people to get that following is, we had somebody, whether it was one of the band members' girlfriends or family or somebody who's a fan. We had a booth where we were actually selling T-shirts,
right.
We had 4-song CDs we would sell. Mm-hmm. We would sell the banners. We would sell and give out flyers for our next show.
Yes.
And that's huge because that swag of getting people interested in it. Because if somebody's willing to buy a T-shirt, and I'll tell you what, we would actually break even on the cost of these T-shirts.
Yes.
It's free advertising. Everybody who walks around, they're going to say, "Oh, wow, who's that?"
Right.
And we were selling these things for $5 a piece.
So the recipe is to have 2 people at a booth, and then to get 2 super fans.
Yes.
To come into the booth too and pay them.
Yep.
Cash.
Absolutely.
Just to hand out and say hello, and all of a sudden the energy and the vibe is there.
Well, we even had with one band I was with, we had our guitar player's girlfriend who was also a model, and guys, were drawn. They didn't know who she was, but just to talk to her, they'd come up and they'd buy a T-shirt. So you've got to think about that as far as marketing, getting somebody either a super fan or somebody who can draw people in.
Yes. So it is the T-shirt, and the band should have shirts that they're all looking alike.
Absolutely.
With their band name on it, and then you have to have a motion logo that goes from a projector screen onto the venue where you're performing, so that people see the name of your group in motion as you're performing. You need to have someone during the show announce the show, or to say, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is so-and-so band." You have to have an MC or someone introducing and announcing who they are as they're breaking too.
Yes.
You need to have all these things. Fun things like Nerf balls with the band name on them.
Yes.
All of these things, balloons, even with the band name on them. It maybe depending on the type of band. You want to have these things, and so this is something you have to bring to the show. You have to just let people see that it's available, and they'll come up to you.
And when we were with my band, there's plenty of these print shops, and depending on the quantity you buy, we were getting 100 T-shirts for $2 each.
Uh-huh.
So it's not expensive. Balloons, you can get all the pre-printed we can get pre-printed balloons, 1,000 balloons for a penny a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one thing, find your local print shop are more than happy to help you. They can print T-shirts, flyers. That's something I definitely recommend the bands is get stuff with your logo on it. And then your band T-shirts. Everybody should be wearing the same shirt.
Yeah.
You can also have a banner made that you can put up at shows, and they're fairly cheap.
Yes, yes. So that is what you need to do if you're in a band. And you also have to have a logo, something that conveys, again, what the name of your band is in color. And so that people remember. Now, this could be something that you draw, you make, or it is something that is a digital type of process to make it.
Yes, and there are a lot of students out there with the local community colleges who are studying to be graphic artists.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Who are more than welcome, more than happy to help you out. And I remember the logo that I recently got for a band that I'm putting together. I had the graphic artist for less than $50 make an amazing, because they're so glad because they're not only you advertising your band, they're getting their artwork out there. And I'll mention her name to, hey, who did your logo? So it's advertising for them as well.
You also need to have a website that allows you to sell tickets on the website and allows you to a customer to purchase the swag on the website, as well as to hear your sound clips on your website. So you need to be able to do commerce on your site as a band.
And the one way you can...
And to donate.
And one way to do this as far as your band, first of all, you need to, before you create a website, you need to search your band's name to see if that domain is actually taken, because you can purchase a domain, but somebody may have that domain already purchased. I've heard of bands where, let's say their band is spelled one way, but their domain for that name is taken, so they have to change the spelling of the band.
It is true for any business or any name that you're going to domain, that you have to check to make sure that you're not going to be, it's not just that it's not taken, but that it's not going to screw up the search.
Yes.
If you're looking for that band and there are 3 others like it, but they're not even in your country.
Yes, and you can actually copyright. Once you register that domain, you copyright the name of the band. So all the T-shirts, because this is very important, if you're having banners and T-shirts and hats made, you definitely want to own the rights to that logo and to that name. And you can actually search that through the patent office.
There's a funny story. I've seen situations where indie bands in this country put out an album. And if it's successful, China will pick it up and clone the name.
Oh, yeah.
And put junk on it. But they're selling it it's basically a forgery of your band.
Absolutely.
I've seen it.
But you can purchase your domain. Some of these don't. If you do a search, some of these they go from up to a penny, up to $1,000 to own the domain. But definitely, a lot of people set on the name of their band. You want to search the name of your band and see if it's already taken, because it may be, or it may be a matter of just changing the spelling.
Right. We will be right back. See you on the other side. And we are back, and we are basically out of time for this episode. I did want to thank everyone for listening. I want to, again, make sure people know that I'm asking you to listen to the Trex's cymbals and see if you fall in love with them yourself, as I have, and you have the Neumann mics that you
The Neumann microphones?
Yeah.
I want everybody to try the Neumann microphones because, I want all art. I truly care about the artists and the music out there, and I want singers, I want you to sound your best. And, I wouldn't recommend something that I didn't think would make you sound your best. So I think it's give the Neumann microphones a shot. There's plenty of retailers you can go try these out at. And, everybody's ear is different, but see what you think. And I think the Neumanns are amazing and worth you trying out.
Okay. for the next episode, episode 4, I think we're going to write a song on the air. I just think it's that's where my head is. Let's go ahead and show everyone what it's all about to write a song, and it's going to be interesting and intense to do that because writing a song is an intense experience.
Absolutely, it's very intense. It's very personal, and we'll also go over song structure. And it's not just writing an entire page. There's a certain structure that has to happen.
Yeah, we're getting into that. So that will be, but it's way beyond that. It's the vibe, it's the music, it's the sound. Anyway, we will explain to you how we write a song, and answer probably the biggest question that I've ever been asked, and I'm always asked it, and that is, how does an artist write a song? We'll get into this next time. So that's it for this episode. Thank you all for listening to this third episode of the Business of Music Radio. I'm very excited to see you next time. I am Michael Holdt.
And I am Michael Wyatt, and thank you for joining us.
That's right.